Hello and welcome to episode number 31 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk all about the hobby that makes us happy, tabletop gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Dan.
And I'm Jim, and today we're talking about what makes a card game a card game.
All right, so I think we've said this actually probably on like every episode. We have a list of a bunch of different topics, and we're continually adding to it. But as we're trying to figure out kind of what we want to talk about today. So if you haven't yet checked out, by the time this episode's live, we've got an update video, kind of a channel update with what's going on over here at Hobbies and Happiness, and we talked about it last week on the podcast about the future of Hobbies and Happiness, what's been going on. Mm-hmm. So, with everything that's going on, I got everything set up, and, we figure out what we want to talk about today. And this was kind of an interesting topic. I honestly don't know how it came up specifically, but I've actually kind of thought about this kind of off and on for a while. But what makes a card game a card game? So this is part objective and part subjective, and I feel like it's mostly subjective. Mm-hmm. A lot of these topics are mostly subjective, right? Yeah. There's a hint of objectivity to them, mm-hmm. But I think this topic in particular is probably going to be more subjective than anything.
Yeah.
So Jim, let me kind of ask you, like when I say that, when I ask that question, is there something that like pops immediately into your head? Like, what makes a card game a card game?
Honestly, when you first said it, I was like, duh, it's the cards. But then I was like, wait a minute. Well,
that exactly. Like there's a lot. There really is a lot that goes into it, I feel like.
Yeah. And it's, as I was sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, well, the cards themselves have to be like majority of where the game is based around, whether mm-hmm. it's the information on the cards, or it could be the resources. You could also have a card game with a board, but that's more so representing the points that you have, or it could also be placement of where your character should be at, or where they are placed in order to do specific things that the cards themselves could also state. Yeah.
So I was actually going through our archive of episodes, and we talk a lot about card games, because that's who we are. We're card game players, mm-hmm. and that is what we really enjoy. And I remember we had an episode where we talked with Keegan, Foxbox Games, and he's a big card game player as well. And one thing that he said that, and I'll never forget this, because I'm like, I was right there. He was like, anytime a game says multi-use cards, I'm in.
Yeah.
And like, yes, totally. So in going through like a lot of our topics, episode 28, all about the DC deck building game. We had an episode strictly dedicated to deck building games. Mm-hmm. When we talked with Keegan, it was Card Games Are Awesome with Keegan Cole. We talked all about the Lord of the Rings, the card game, mm-hmm. why we love and enjoy card games, episode 20. Let's see, how we have fun in card games, all about deck building games. So we have a lot of episodes dedicated to different aspects of card games. Mm-hmm. We're just adding to it, basically.
Yes.
With this episode. So one of the things that I mentioned this to you just beforehand, Disney Villainous.
Yeah.
Right. Is that a card game? So basically, I feel like anytime you're going to ask this question about a specific game, you have to go back to, okay, what is your definition of a card game?
Yeah.
Like, how do you define a card game? So how do we define a card game? Jim, how do you define a card game?
I guess I kind of already said how I define it, where the cards are pretty much the key point of the entire the games.
So what makes it a key point then?
So,
because I feel like that it can be kind of ambiguous.
Yeah. So like when the cards will state certain effects that you could be doing, or, you know, it could even have like attack values, things along those lines. Really just any effect off of these cards. And the game itself is more focused on those cards more so than like the board aspect of it, or if you're moving around resources, things along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your eyes, when does a card game stop being a card game? Because like, you know, step one is you have cards, right? And obviously on an intuitive level, if all you have are cards, then that's all it could be. It has to just be a card game, because if there's no other, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a token. If there's nothing else a part of the game, then by definition, basically it's a card game, because that's all that there is.
Yeah.
But when does it stop being a card game? Because honestly, now I'm trying to think, like, could there ever be, and I'm trying to think of games too, like, could it ever be to where there is a game where that all there is, the game components, there we go, that's the term I was looking for, components, game components. Is there a game to where all the game components are cards, but it would not be considered, like, you wouldn't consider it a card game?
Yeah. So I can see kind of like Catan, like a lot of the stuff.
I was thinking about Catan a little bit,
but it's more so just the resource. Well, I guess there's also, all right, there's a lot of components.
There are a lot of components. A lot of different components to it. But I mean, that game is all about essentially resource management.
Yeah.
Is basically what Catan is. Yeah. And yes, Catan, there's a lot of different
board placement.
Yeah, there's a lot of different, right. There's a lot of different components that, worker placement essentially, you know, moving your, placing your roads. There's a lot of different things that go into Catan, but there's a lot of cards. There are a lot of cards to that.
There are.
So like the thing with Catan is there's not a lot of different cards.
Yeah.
You know?
There's really the only one card in there that really messes with your opponent, I believe. Well, it's really just you roll a 7 and I think it's the thief, but that's not even a card.
That's not even a card.
But I do think there are some cards that you can get. It's not like one of the resources. It gives you a random effect. And it gives you a victory point towards the end of the game, I believe.
Okay.
And some of these cards can be like, on your turn, you can reveal one of these to activate the thief.
Yeah.
Or you can do this and get a knight or something along those lines.
Right.
So, I mean, if it didn't have that, it'd be less of a card game, but it's still not a card game.
But the other thing with Catan specifically, there are cards in the game, but the cards are not like a central theme or a central aspect to the game.
Yeah.
They're there just as a component.
Yeah. As
a very minor component. I wouldn't even say that they're a major component.
Yeah.
Because
there's other ways to manage it.
Yeah, because a lot of the cards are just resources, and that's all that they're used for. Because like the wheat, the clay, all that stuff, they are cards, right?
Yeah.
So in that aspect, all the cards are is just resources, and that's the only really way they're being used.
So, but there is one important thing about it is to where when you use the thief on someone, you steal a resource from them.
A random resource.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right.
So pretty much shuffling up your hand.
But the thief, the only way the thief comes into play is not by a card effect. It's by you roll a 7.
Yeah, there's multiple ways,
Right, yeah, that's right. The biggest way it normally comes in is the dice roll.
Yeah.
You roll a 7.
Yeah, so there's the 7 along with the cards, or if you're not even, there's an expansion as well, or like a mini expansion that rather than using the dice, they give you a stack of cards and you reveal off the top rather than rolling the dice. It'll be like there'll be a 12 on there or a 6 or something along those lines. So at that point, it's more of a card game rather than just rolling the dice.
Yeah,
which is also the way I prefer the game.
Well, yeah, but isn't that Settlers of Catan the card game?
No,
Isn't
no, no.
that
It's
one?
so
Oh,
it's
that's
an
a
addition.
different.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's a
rather than
separate
rolling the
expansion.
dice, yeah, you can completely get rid of the dice from the actual game and use this small deck of cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that makes it more of a card game, but at that point, you're really just playing with the RNG or the ratio for the numbers.
Yeah. Right.
So
right. The thing with the dice.
Mhm.
Now I don't know how this is used in the game with the cards, right? But the thing with the dice is you have the same odds at rolling any number every single turn, every single time you roll. Now, but if you change that up to where instead of rolling a dice, you have a deck of cards, the odds are totally different because if it all depends on how it's used, right? If you reveal that top card and then you set that card to the side, then now you have one less card.
Well, you don't have the same odds of rolling any number.
Yes, you do.
Well, you have more than one way of getting a 6 by adding 4 and a 2, 3, 3.
No. All I'm saying. So I'm not talking about Catan specifically.
Okay.
I'm saying if you have 1d6.
Oh, okay.
You have
I got
one
you.
d6. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Yeah.
Obviously,
the
like,
more
what are you
dice you. Yeah, obviously, because I can't even remember how many dice you use with Catan because you
two.
do there. You use two
Yeah,
dice. Yeah. So yeah, if with one dice,
Yes.
then yes, the odds are the same every time you roll.
Yeah. So when it comes to the cards, when you flip over the card, you'll actually see some little pips underneath the number. It'll sometimes have 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Right.
And it depends on the number. So the closer you are to the average number on the dice, so like 6, 7, and an 8 around that point, it'll have the most amount of copies inside the deck, and that's what those pips represent. How many are inside the deck?
Right. But what I'm saying though is even with using 2 dice.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you have 2 dice.
Yes.
And then you have a deck of cards.
Yes.
Right. And in that deck of cards, they did their best to make the ratios relatively equivalent. So what I'm saying is, if you were to take those dice and roll them, okay, and then on the other hand, you just took that deck of cards and then you revealed that top card.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to then take that card that you just revealed, set it aside, okay, and then you still have that deck. So now there's one less card in that deck. The odds are different.
Oh, yeah.
Every time. Now, it all depends if that deck of cards, if that card's revealed off the top, if you just then reshuffle all of the cards.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is that there is a different there's a different randomness basically of that's all. So that's what I'm saying. Like I didn't know in that example you were saying how does that come about? Like, do they, when you reveal that top card, do you just set it aside?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so then it is.
And then there is the exact same thing like you were talking about. There is a card when it's revealed, you shuffle everything up together and redo it.
Okay. So yeah, the odds then are going to be different.
Yeah.
The odds are going to be different. So okay, well that's interesting. That's interesting. So yeah, I mean that's one specific example, like Catan. Okay, so like Disney Villainous, right? I would consider Disney Villainous a card game. Right?
Yeah.
So and you know, I feel like there are people out there, and if you're one of these people, let us know, who would say the only way a card game is a card game is if it's like Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, where it's a TCG or CCG, and that's the only thing that there is.
Yeah.
Right. I don't
agree
with
that those people are wrong.
Yeah. Right. right. Like I don't agree with that. And like the other thing too is I feel like if I were to say that's the case, then I'm depriving myself of a lot of awesome games. Right. Like if I want to play card games, you know, there's a lot of awesome games out there. I mean, so like Disney Villains, I feel like Disney Villains totally is a card game. Yeah. Like the majority of it, of the gameplay is based off of the cards that you're playing.
The only thing the board pretty much does, other than there are some people where the board matters because it could be like, oh, get a unit at every single location and then you win, or things along those lines, or clear the board of whatever tokens there are. and then you can win off of that. But it's really you're moving.
But even all of those those are elements of different cards.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm more so saying for the board itself, it's really just telling you what you're allowed to do.
The board is like a worker placement.
Yeah.
Almost type of genre or effect type of thing, right? Because you have your
go to this location to get whatever effects off and stuff like that.
So there's a little bit of worker placement, I think. Man, there's another. I feel like there's a different type of game mechanic. What other game mechanic would you say is inherent to the villainous games? Because it is a little bit of worker placement, kind of, because you're taking your mover, your piece mover, and then moving it from location to location, and giving you access to different actions.
Resources, whatever actions it is.
Right.
What else I would consider it? I don't know.
Like, are there other game mechanics that are involved into that game? I don't even know. I honestly I don't know.
Yeah. I
feel like worker placement would probably be the best descriptor. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, that game, everything is involved in the cards.
Yeah.
Is really that game.
Yeah.
The cards and the villain guides.
Yeah. And BGG. That's the most important part.
Right? But yeah, like I would 100% classify the villainous games as card games.
I was gonna say, do people not consider it a card game?
I don't know. Like I would think
they're like, there's a board. It's a board game.
Well, right. That's the thing. I would be curious to know. I'd be curious to know. Like that was one thing that I've been kind of thinking about for a while, because we're card game players and we've done a lot of Disney villainous videos, and it's like like these games are totally up our alley, and they are card games.
Yeah,
they totally are. I mean, because you've got a 40 card deck, and then you have a 15 card.
I was gonna say, is it 40 cards? I didn't even know.
I'm pretty sure they're 40 card decks.
Okay,
yeah,
it seems it could be 40.
I am pretty sure. We'll have to double check.
Okay.
Do I even have that on here? I do not. No, maybe I do. I'll have to see if I've got it on this laptop, because I have the deck lists. And so actually,
it's probably 40.
I'm pretty sure it's 40 cards. Oh, of course, network discovery's turned off. What? That's weird.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 40 card decks.
All right.
So, but yeah, you've got your 40 card decks of villain cards, and then you have your fate decks, which are 15 cards. Except Yzma's, I think it's 16 cards.
Yeah, because you got the 4/4 stacks.
The 4/4 stacks. Yep. So yeah, so that's another one, right? So we've talked at length about deck building games. I mean, those are I don't know how you could classify them as not card games, right?
Yeah.
Now, like even so just like anything within, because card games are like a very broad genre, right? So within the card game genre, you can get even more specific, right? So a deck building game is a more specific card game, right? So obviously all the deck builders totally are. Seven Wonders Duel, like that's a card game. Because the majority of
cards.
It's all cards. Totally. Like that is all cards. Not Dune. Dune Imperium is a card game, because that's like a deck builder. That is a deck builder, and there's elements of worker placement. There's a lot of different elements in that game, but that really is, I mean, that is probably like 70-30 or 60-40 a card game. Because it does have a pretty large board. All the expandable card games, I mean, those are obviously all card games too. But again, so with the question of what makes a card game, right? So I guess it really isn't a question of what makes a card game, right? It's what makes a card game not a card game, right? I feel like that's a better question.
So at what point?
Yeah, because at what point does it stop being a card
Yeah.
game? Let me ask you something. Have you ever played Dice Throne?
Dice Throne. No, I haven't.
Okay, I have not yet played it either.
Okay.
Today, they just announced the Kickstarter for Marvel Dice Throne.
Okay.
I believe I actually posted it on the Discord. And I'm actually opening it up now. So what I know about Dice Throne, and let us know. Let us know if you guys have played this game. And if you've played it, let us know if we're wrong, if I'm wrong here. But my understanding, and of course, as I'm trying to open up all of these things, it's you haven't opened this application in a while, and now it's wanting to update literally everything. So this is going to take me a minute to actually find this. So actually, let me just search it. Marvel Dice Throne. All right. So here we go. Marvel Dice Throne. Okay, so I know you've played that Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that game specifically, that Batman the Animated Series Gotham Under Siege, that is a dice placement game for the most part. Okay. There are cards involved in that game. Do you remember?
I don't even remember the game.
Okay, so if you turn around,
yeah.
It's right underneath Race for the Galaxy.
Ooh, should I grab it?
You can grab it if you want. I'm more so. The only reason I'm asking you this is I'm trying because I want to get your take on if you think it's a card game or not. So you're just gonna have to remember playing it.
Okay.
So you remember it now?
Oh, with the different characters.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember any of the cards.
Well, you don't have to remember the cards.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So you remember playing it? We played it upstairs at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a card game? So the game I'm asking him about is called Batman the Animated Series Gotham Under Siege. It was published by IDW Games a couple of years ago. It's relatively new. I picked it up because I'm a huge Batman fan, particularly Batman the Animated Series fan. Basically, the game is you pick a character and then you have dice. It's essentially a dice placement game. There are a lot of cards involved. Yeah. Each hero has I think they have like 10 cards maybe. And the cards are basically additional abilities.
So now that I'm remembering more about it, I would say, yeah, especially going off of like how I defined it earlier of like, sure, there can be a board and other pieces, but you putting your character inside the city or outside the city is more so only to like go use your cards to stop whatever action.
So I would say
abilities.
no. I would say no.
Okay.
Because that game is more about the dice than it is about the cards.
Okay.
So with that game, because your abilities are really not all dependent on the cards. It's more so dependent on what you roll with the dice.
I also don't remember the cards, so I think that could be a big.
So you don't remember then?
I don't remember what the cards are specifically now.
So give us a second here, guys. This is like literally we're figuring this stuff out on the fly. So all the cards were was just so for example, because if you look on the back, so
is this the one where you like revealed like 2 or something?
Yeah, each turn you revealed 2.
Oh, okay.
And then you kept them.
Okay. Then yeah, I wouldn't say
so because this game. It's more so all about your character and their
I thought it was like
board.
Yeah, I thought it was more like you had multiple cards and the characters.
The cards. Okay, so there were more cards that were involved on the villain side because you had the axe.
Yeah.
And then it was reveal a bunch of different cards from like whatever act you're in if you're in act 1, 2, or 3. But I mean, the cards definitely play a role. But again, from the player standpoint, it's really more about the dice than anything.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I don't think either of us would consider it a card game. No. Now that Jim is remembering,
I'm like, well, I thought I remembered having multiple cards, but if
there
we didn't have, I was more so meaning using multiple cards in like a single turn. But you were saying it was you had 2 to pick from, and you would have 1 that gave you extra added effects. Correct?
Okay, but let's assume let's assume your remembering of the game was correct. Okay. So if what you were thinking was correct, okay, is it still a card game?
I would say if you're able to use like multiple cards in a single turn.
Define using the card though.
I guess it would more so be having the opportunity to use multiple or play multiple cards to destroy people or to destroy the enemy on the board, whether it's inside the city or outside the city. So
the cards in this game did none of that.
Yeah.
So everything, all of what you could do in that game was not based off of the cards. It was 100% based off of what you rolled with the dice.
Yeah. I'm more so meaning like, because how I was thinking of it was not at all what it actually is. And
that's what I'm trying to figure out is what did you think it was?
I honestly did not remember.
Because I'm just trying to think of what we've played at the kitchen table.
I don't know. It's been a while since we played this. Months?
Yeah, it has been a while. It has been a while.
I was also thinking about it with like, all right, well, maybe it's just the ability on the cards that are just additional effects. And if the cards themselves are the primary, not even like resource, but like, I don't know, just to move the objective forward for you. But that's not the case. And it is pretty much all rolling.
Okay.
Dice.
So going off of that, because now that we're talking about cards and dice, Ashes Reborn. So I kind of want you to keep talking about that and frame it around Ashes Reborn.
Yeah. The dice themselves are a resource for the cards.
Okay, how so?
Well,
can you explain that?
So the cards, you have to activate them with. So on the dice, you have 3 different resources. We'll give them different tiers. So tier 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So an easier card to pull off could be like, all right, you need 1 or 2 tier 3 resources.
Yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar, so with Ashes
higher.
So with Ashes Reborn, you've got your cards, and then you also have your dice. Your dice essentially are your resource pool, right? And on the dice, there's basically 3 different sides. What Jim, you said, you're saying tier 1, 2, and 3, basically. Yes. Okay, so that's how he's referring to the different sides. Tier 1, there's 3 sides because each dice is a d6. So tier 1, you have 3 opportunities to roll. On 1d6. Tier 2, you have 2 opportunities, and then tier 3, there's 1 side on the d6. Okay. So that being said, go ahead.
So, and then depending on what it is you roll, that kind of changes up how many actions with your cards you can even take.
Right. It's a lot easier thinking about this conversation in terms of Ashes Reborn because because the dice themselves are your resource pool.
Yeah.
The dice are your mana, essentially.
Yeah. And it's pretty much that's all it's used for.
Correct. Yeah.
So
yeah. That is the only way that the dice are used. But in talking about a dice placement game, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the dice still technically are your resource, right?
Yeah.
So again, we're taking this we're taking this back to Gotham Under Siege. Okay. So each player. Go ahead and look at Robin, right? So I'm going to look at Catwoman here. So each character has a side. Like they have their healthy side and their wounded side.
Yeah.
Okay. And so each so on their on their healthy side, right? They've got like different abilities that you can trigger, right? And you trigger it with the dice. So in this context, are the dice a resource? Dice kind of.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's definitely
Right.
a resource because it allows you exactly like how many times you could use whatever the effect, or if you can even use the effect at all.
Right. Yeah.
But this one is definitely a lot more specific in terms of like needing the exact number or like pair of numbers.
Yeah.
Because on Robin, he needs a 6 in order to do this. And then the other one, you need a 2 exactly in order to do this. So then you need to specifically have that die. And if you don't, well, in comparison to Ashes, I'm like, why can I not remember the name?
Sure, yeah.
In comparison to that is you have a lot more easy of a time getting those exact resources that you need for the cards because there is really only 3 and you can even upgrade.
Yeah, you can upgrade your dice.
Yeah. So
your resources basically. Yeah.
And if say you needed 3 tier 1 dice to activate a card, but you only had 2, well, you could use a tier 2 in placement of the tier 1. However we want to say the numbers. Tier 1 should technically be the highest.
Yeah, right.
But I just know when you were talking about it, it was reversed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I just kept going with how you said it.
Sure.
So yeah, it is a lot more different to where this one is more specific in terms of the dice that you need.
Right. Yeah. So and then in looking at the cards too. So if what I can remember, right, is I think every turn, basically each character looks like gets 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, it seems like just
7
extra bonuses.
Yeah, so each character has their own board basically, and what abilities that they can do.
Yeah.
And so each character has like 7 different cards, right? What you do is you shuffle up, and then you reveal the top 2, and then of those 2 you get to pick which one you get to use for the round.
Yeah.
So like Catwoman. Here's one of her cards. It's called Rooftop Serenade, and it says, each time you make an attack from the rooftops, deal an additional 5 damage. Like, so that's kind of just a nice bonus effect. And this one is called Blessings of Isis. It says Catwoman is immune to mastermind attacks and special abilities, except for the Riddler and Poison Ivy. Additionally, she can encounter villain special tokens by spending just 1 attack point rather than 2.
Okay.
So they're like just bonus kind of additional abilities.
The main thing is definitely not the cards.
Right. Now, however, there are, I'd have to find them here. I think they're in this box. Yeah, this box is way fuller. But this one has all of the villain cards. Okay. And so you've got Act 1. Act 2, Act 3, you've got all the different acts, okay? And what these are, so like Act 1, I'm looking at all the Act 1 cards. These are the bad things that come into play that they're like, I don't know what you would say, but they're the objectives basically that you have to beat. And so there could be like 7 of these out on board that you have to defeat in that act.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these kind of are like here, Flames of Fear. In a 2-player game, you need in a 2-player game, you need 4. You need to place 1 4. 1 dice with the 4 showing. And it says, if not defeated, you roll a die. On a 1 to a 5, you move the explosion token 1 space to the left. On a 6, you move it 2 spaces to the left. Ouch. And it says, while active, heroes that move onto the rooftop become wounded. That's not cool either. That is your hero. They have to flip their board to the wounded side.
Yeah.
So these definitely are key parts of the game. More so, I feel like, than the hero cards.
It's also just to give a randomness of what the AI that you're versing is doing.
Right. Yeah. So depending, so it really honestly all depends more so on how many players are in the game.
Yeah.
And they will tell you in a 3-player game, You reveal like 5 cards or something,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But still, even after going over that, that's still not a card game.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's still not a card game. Like, the cards a big part of the game? I mean, maybe so. Why is Discord not stinking working? What in the world? That's annoying. The cards,
It's definitely a part of the game.
yeah. So it's at what part of the game does it now cross that threshold of, okay, now it's a card game?
51.
Yeah.
No, I guess it could be less than 51. If there's like 5 parts of it, it could be like, 21. No, it couldn't even be 21. I don't know.
No, yeah. Like, I mean, Catan cards, like the majority, if you were to set aside, if you were to count all the pieces and say how many of them are cards, there's probably way more cards than anything
Probably
in that game, but it's still not a card game.
Yeah, but it's really only there because they give you enough resources.
Well,
so
right,
like you don't
right.
run out.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like if you stack everything up, there's a ton of cards in that game.
Yeah, there are.
So Dice Throne is one.
Catan is a tile placement game.
Yeah. So I'm actually playing the video and I'm turning it down here a little bit. I mean, I'm a little bit familiar with Dice Throne.
Yeah.
So we're actually watching the trailer right now. So they have Miles Morales in this game. So this looks kind of a little bit like Batman the Animated Series, the Gotham Under Siege.
Yeah.
It looks more so like a dice placement game.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there's cards involved, right? I mean, with a name called Dice Throne, right? You would think that the dice are going to be like the major component, right? So we've seen Black Panther, we've seen Thor, they've got Black Widow, they've also got Captain Marvel.
Like they
here.
haven't even shown.
They haven't even shown any
matter.
cards yet. Yeah, they also have Scarlet Witch. I believe Doctor Strange is also in here. But in Loki's also
nice.
involved too. They have shown, so like they even say up here, become your favorite Marvel hero in this fast and exhilarating game of skilled card and dice play.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is a game where, I mean, they've combined it's dice and cards. So like there's cards there.
Yeah.
And so how to play. Marvel Dice Throne is a fast, intuitive, and can be taught in a few minutes. Okay. So step 1, you choose your hero. Step 2, you roll your dice and you activate abilities. Okay. Step 3, upgrade abilities. Use upgrade cards to improve your hero abilities as the game progresses. So it looks like the cards are like upgrades.
Yeah.
They're like upgraded abilities.
So you probably place the cards over what your base abilities are.
And then you have use action cards. Play action cards strategically to manipulate the dice and surprise your foe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Claim victory. Okay. Okay. So I'd be interested because this is all right. So Spider-Man. Player leaflet, 32 hero cards, a health dial, combat point dial, and then 5 dice. So, I mean, that's a good amount of cards. If there's 32 cards.
I was going to say, for every single person, if there's 32.
Scarlet Witch has 32
like
cards. Thor has 33 cards. Black Widow's 32. Doctor Strange has 32. Loki has 32. Captain Marvel has 32. Black Panther has 32. So, okay.
From just watching the video, I don't think I would have said it is, but going off of the description and what you were reading, I would say so.
Yeah. And so you can, here's the other thing too, you can also be a card game as well as another type of game.
Yeah.
So it looks like the Dice Throne game. And so Dice Throne, I've seen this game, not the Marvel one, because this just came out on Kickstarter, but I have seen Dice Throne everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've never really got into it just because I didn't really take the time to look into it.
Right.
But it seems pretty popular. And so like it's strategy focused, right? Which is, as a card game players, that's our main focus. Like that's our bread and butter is we love strategy games, right? So, strategy game is above the umbrella of card game, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like every card game is a strategy game for the most part. There are definitely what's there's party games that are card games, which really aren't strategy games. But
all right, well, I guess depending on it, but there could
Exploding
be
Kittens. I mean, Exploding
Exploding
Kittens is a little
for sure.
strategically. Yeah.
I'm like, there are nope cards.
Yeah, there are nope cards. Yeah.
Just like, oh, it's gonna explode. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
You can't stop. You can't stop. You can't stop they explode. There's a bomb. I don't know. You can't use a nope card to stop the bomb from going off.
Okay.
Because when you draw it, that bomb,
something else.
Yeah, because you draw the bomb.
Yeah.
Then it explodes.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you thinking of the unicorn one?
I don't know.
The nay?
Probably. But even Super Nay can't be. So,
Super Nay can't be nayed.
Yeah. Super Nay can't be nayed. But what I was thinking, well, aside from.
Honestly, Marvel Dice one I'm probably going to back.
Yeah. Even like, say we talk about Cards Against Humanity and cards games along those lines.
Cards Against Humanity is basically apples to apples.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Just Cards Against along those lines.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's even a strategy, but it's not so much built inside the game. It's more of like, I know how you think. Or I need to assume how you think and what is going to be the best.
That's the
strategy part. That's meta strategy.
Well, right. But that's not inherent to a card game. I don't know. I mean, I know what you're saying. I know what you're getting at.
You have to figure out. You have to strategize what card your opponent's going to pick.
But the thing is, like, you can say that about any game to where you're playing the man.
Yeah.
Because that the strategy that you're defining basically is playing the man.
Yeah.
So that's.
Well, I mean, but isn't that really what a lot of strategy games are? Is you have to try and figure out how your opponent is going to do stuff. Or is that just like the third level of strategy games?
No. Like, I mean, dude, I remember like when I really got into Magic and I was trying to get better at the game. I bought what's his name? I've got his face, Top Level Podcast, Patrick Chapin. There we go. I bought his book. All right. He's a Magic Hall of Famer. He's a pro. He wrote a book. He wrote a couple of books. One about deck building, and then one about just trying to basically be a better Magic player, right? Like I wanted to, up my skill. Like I wanted to get better, right? Yeah. And I feel like as a strategy card game player, or just honestly as a competitive player of anything in general, right? That's what everybody wants to do. So we want to get better, right? So, I have his book. I've read it a few times, and I'm probably going to keep reading it. But like he talks a lot about, and again, in tabletop, you're sitting across from your opponent, right? Use the cues, and you try and throw them off, and then you're trying to get as much information from them as you possibly can. Like even if you know their deck, you have to know what's in their hand, right? And so like playing the man is and will always be a viable and necessary strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. And that it makes it a lot more difficult playing digitally. Okay. Playing card games digitally, if you're not sitting in front of somebody, that takes a lot of the strategy out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when
they even make it easier for you on MTG Arena. So like if your opponent doesn't have an instant speed anything to do on their turn, it'll just, you have priority again.
So many times I'm like, all right, they do not have an instant. Yep. And that's why if you're playing Arena, you play full control mode because you don't want to give your opponent any information.
Gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of strategy, like that's always going to be a thing. And so like if you think about it, like any type of game to where that's a thing,
But that doesn't make it a strategy game.
Right,
That's a
yes.
completely different
right,
thing.
right. Anytime you're playing a game, there's always there's going to be a strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
Like fighting games, professional fighting game players, whether it's Smash, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, whatever it is,
Right.
It's a fighting game, and it comes down to really your mechanics inside the game, but you have to be able to read your opponent, because so many times people will guess as to where they're going to go. And if you can guess correctly, judging based upon like what they've done the last few times that they were put into that situation, then you could, if you call it correctly, you can seriously punish them.
Yeah, right.
But again, that is a fighting game, isn't really a strategy game.
Right. But it is interesting.
Yeah.
It is very interesting to know how much strategy goes into a fighting game.
Yeah.
Into playing it very well. So, okay. So, I mean, there's a lot more that we can say about this, and we'll still keep talking about this, but as far as what makes a card game, if you're going to have that discussion, I think you need to reverse it. I think you need to flip it. I think you need to just say at what point is a card game not a card game?
Yeah.
Right? Because the moment cards are involved, it is now a card game. Okay? Like by definition, there's cards there. I'm playing a game, card game, right?
Yeah, but if there's a board, and then like if the board is bigger than the cards themselves.
Well, right. But it can also be a card game and a board game.
Yeah.
Right. Disney Villain is a card game. It's also a board game, right? It's, it can have multiple identifiers, right? So like a game can be multiple things. A game can be a card game. A game can also be a board game, right? So
I was going to say, is more board game to where the board is being shared by more than one player or all players as a whole?
Depends on how you define it.
Yeah.
Like with a lot of these things, it's like ultimately, how do you personally define it? Number one, but number two, like there does have to be some sort of universal like definitions, if you will, right?
Yeah, some form of agreement amongst
right,
people.
Right. But in a lot of these discussions, it's like, does it matter?
Never has.
Right, that's the thing. Like a lot of these conversations don't really matter. In
Welcome to Nerd Talk.
Yeah, right.
I care, Dan. I care.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've said that to my wife, where she's been like, "Does it really matter, Dan?" Yes, honey, it does to me. Okay, I don't care what you think it matters to me. All right, don't take this away from me. Okay. But like, honestly, though, don't make these conversations matter so much to the point to where you're, you are gatekeeping, right?
Yeah.
And you're taking the joy away from somebody else, right? In a lot of these games, it's like we want as many people. I mean, generally, I feel like if you're playing these games, you want more people to be playing these games with you, because the less people that play means that game that you enjoy is going to die.
Yeah.
Like I go back to thinking about Legends. Elder Scrolls Legends is dead. There's nobody plays it anymore. I shouldn't say nobody, but there's not a lot of people that play it anymore. Right? When it was alive and flourishing, it was a lot of fun because there was a lot of content being made about it. There's a lot of people talking about it. A lot of people talking about strategy. A lot of people just making content and enjoying and playing the game. And there were tournaments, big tournaments about it. There was Bethesda ran a $500,000 tournament. I think it was that much. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money for the tournament. I think they did it at QuakeCon. I think is the big convention where they had the tournament at. But like all of that is gone. And so if you enjoyed that game, it's like, where are you now? You know, like where are you and that game?
Yeah.
That's all gone, right? And so that is where these companies are finding themselves. That's where Wizards of the Coast, that's where they are finding themselves. Like, that's where they're like, how can we keep this around? And that's where people who play that game, it's like, we don't want to be
it's
so
been out
involved
for 30 years.
Yeah, Jim, we don't have no video here, so they can't see that.
Oh yeah, they couldn't see that. My bad. Habits.
Yeah. So, yeah, like ultimately these discussions don't matter in the end, but it's still interesting.
What really matters in the end?
Yeah, right. And that is only and that can only be answered on an individual level. Yeah, so ultimately these things don't matter, but at the same token, it's still interesting to think about, right? But don't take these conversations that we have, or honestly that you have, right? If you're listening, and become so attached to where you're starting to alienate those around you, especially other people in the hobby.
Yeah.
Right. And in this space. So just think about that. Like I implore those of you who are listening to this to think about that. just keep that in mind. So like for us, card games, right? So I think what makes a card game is when the cards are the major component of the game, and where you get the majority of the information and gameplay from.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, did you define it a little bit differently earlier?
That's pretty much how I first said it. But yeah, that's roughly the same thing. I honestly don't remember exactly what I said.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably a pretty good definition. But where it really gets interesting, like we said, is talking about it in reverse is when does it stop being a card game? So I think for us, we're more so gonna focus on it on that first aspect of once cards are involved. The moment we know cards are a major component of the game, then we're probably on board. Like Dice Throne, now I'm like, all right, this actually looks interesting. I do like the interplay of dice and cards. Like I enjoy the Batman game that we talked about earlier. What I would the way I would enjoy that more is if the cards were more of a major component.
Yeah,
and I think this game, Dice Throne, looks like
this looks awesome.
That's similar. Yeah. It looks
like you're
really,
using
really
the cards
cool.
to evolve up your abilities, use them to get whatever effects.
Yes.
It looks really great.
Yeah, it looks cool. I'm most likely going to be backing this game.
You know what game I'm really excited to play again?
What?
Evian.
Yes.
From when we already talked about this when we were in Gen Con. One of the demos we got to play Evian. That game was great. I can't wait to blow up on someone's face again.
I feel like I forgot to. Oh no, I did.
Which that game is a lot of different things. Like it's a board game. You're getting these resources every single turn, and like the placement on the board does matter because the range on your spells can only go so far. Same thing.
Skytear is totally It's a MOBA card game.
Yeah. That's another amazing one.
Yeah. Skytear is really, really interesting and really, really cool.
Yeah.
One game that I want to play with you is the Raiders of the North Sea.
Yeah.
It's mostly that's a worker placement game. Cards are a big factor, but it's totally worker placement. That's like all that game is. I kind of want to toss this to you guys. For you guys listening, like, what when is a card game a card game? Like what
What is a card game? Not a card game.
Yeah, like both of those questions. Like, how would you define a card game, and how would you define not a card game?
And if there is a game that you like play with people and you're like, oh yeah, I love this card game. And people are like, this isn't a card game.
Yeah.
And you're like, look, I can show you why it's a card game.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can show you why it's not a card game.
Yeah. So, like, for us, like we've said, we're focused on when something is a card game,
Yeah.
not when it's not.
Yeah.
So, because those are two different discussions. But again, guys, let me know. Let us know what your thoughts are. When do you when is a card game for you? When is it not a card game? When is something not a card game?
And going based off of like how we defined it, like, is there a game that you guys can think of going off of that makes it a card game, but it's still not a card game because there's just more aspects to it that make it not.
This is definitely a nuanced discussion.
Which could just be one of those more complex games.
Right. This is definitely a nuanced discussion. I mean, when we were younger, it was a whole lot easier because all there was Magic and Pokemon.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was a super easy discussion to be had.
Yeah.
Is it Magic? Is it Pokemon? Yes. Okay. It's a card game. No. Okay. It's not a card game. Like now it's so nuanced
Uno's a
and
card
involved.
game.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah. Uno is a card game.
Phase 10.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot.
Right. But like the market has become crazy.
Yeah.
The market is and like crazy in a good way. Like crazy in such a good way of there's all these awesome games now.
Which is terrible for our wallets.
Yeah. I'll have to show you. I think I backed a couple of games on Kickstarter
What have you
today.
done? She's about to back another one.
Yeah, right. So Marvel Dice Throne is going to be on.
That looks really cool.
For a couple.
I wonder if
like
that's how the normal Dice Throne is.
I don't know. Like,
If it
I would
is,
assume so.
I'd love to get it.
Exactly. And there's probably a lot of them out.
Yeah.
So it's going to cost us,
Base game,
a little
Dan.
bit of money.
Start with
Start with the base game and then
And it's
just
like,
buy
the base
everything.
game, the base of everything.
Yeah. So guys, let us know your thoughts. So going off of that, hey, you know what? We would really appreciate it if you guys who are listening to the podcast, leave us a review. Leave us a 5-star review and let us know why you like the podcast.
Or don't like the podcast and give us a 1-star review if you want.
Yeah, so we'd really appreciate the reviews and the ratings just to get hopefully get more of the podcast out there for more listeners. So we'd really appreciate that. And then lastly, guys, do you have any gaming stories? Do you have any memories that you want us to read out on the podcast?
I'm sure you do. You just got to type it to us.
Yeah, let us know if you have a, that one memory I talked about with Bobby and a Secret Hitler, how we argued
Dan,
for
he's been on the show twice now. We don't have to call him Bobby.
I know. I just say it because it's funny now.
I guess technically it's 3 times, right?
Yeah,
We
no.
had 2 videos with him?
2 videos of them and then
the podcast. So 3 times, yeah.
So yeah, he's been on our stuff
2 days, 3 times.
Yeah. So yeah. That's how that works. Yeah, but if you guys have any interesting stories you want us to tell, let us know. We would love to read those out on the podcast for people to see. I do not think that we've got any new ones. But I'm actually opening up, email. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here. So yeah, if you've got anything new, let us know. we would love to read those stories out.
The email's down there. You just got to
it's hobbies and
copy,
happiness at
paste.
gmail.com if you want to email us. Jim, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jim Morgan HNH.
And you can find me on Twitter at _DG Campbell and Instagram at Daniel.G.Campbell. And you can find Hobbies and Happiness on just about every social media platform, Hobbies and Happiness. Yeah, so check us out on Twitter, Facebook. The majority of our content comes out on Facebook. Our YouTube content is Hobbies and Happiness at YouTube. It's where a lot of our video content stays. And I think that's about it for today. So check out all that stuff on our content. And with all of that being said, thanks everybody for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode. See you, everybody.
Take care.
And those were the